talking about my top week 9 defensive streamers, it's going to be a really tricky week because usual top units like Dallas face the Eagles this week. The Bills get Cincinnati. The Cowboys, the Eagles themselves, good defense that you typically rely on. The Chiefs get Miami. All these defenses that you typically kind of just set and forget are facing the best of offenses this week. So we probably have a lot more people begging for some defensive streamers. Now, the first game I kind of want to target for that is Atlanta facing Minnesota. Atlanta, the home team, I think edges out the priority, but there's a few reasons why you might consider Minnesota ahead of them. In fact, I kind of want to go Minnesota. Let's talk about both of them, though. You got Atlanta, who, yeah, they didn't do a whole ton this last week, but they get Jaron Hall, BYU last round pick here, day 3. He's going to be making his debut against a hostile Atlanta crowd on the road. And Falcons, yeah, they haven't had the big plays, a ton of turnovers, any touchdowns yet this year. They quietly, though, rank 6th in the league in yardage allowed right now, 8th total against the pass. This is going to be a hard time for Jared Hall to walk in and move this ball against him. We know how bad the Vikings run game is, too. And Atlanta, yeah, they lost Grady Jarrett, but they've been the second hardest team to run on in football so far this year. So this is a solid overall defense that hasn't had the big plays, but leave it to Jared Hall, who did have a turnover 6 to welcome himself to the NFL this last week. I could definitely see that going the Falcons' way. But Minnesota, on the other side of things, don't discredit them. In fact, over the last 5 weeks, I couldn't believe this stat. Over the last 5 weeks, Minnesota ranks number 1 in total fantasy points for defenses, averaging nearly 12 points per game. 10, 8, 21, 2, and 17 points in their last 5 games. And that 2-point dud came against the Chiefs. That's what you'd expect. I tell you, we're never using them in that week anyways. And largely that has come on the back of Hunter, the number 1 leader in sacks in the NFL right now. They have 5, 5, and 4 sack efforts mixed into that 5-week span. They have 2 defensive touchdowns across that span. So this is an opportunistic defense that is getting to the passer. They have not been surrendering a ton of points. And Atlanta has given up the 7th most points to defenses. Then you also have New Orleans, Denver, and Chicago heading into Minnesota's bye. So you have a pretty decent schedule where you might not have to play defensive roulette here. And you also have Desmond Ridder. That would make this even more palatable because you know how often he's turning over the ball. Should they go to Heineke, which is what they should do, and all the tea leaves suggest they will, it becomes a little bit less of a palatable outcome here. But I ultimately, if it is Ridder, I would go Minnesota as the top defense, no questions asked. Should it be Heineke? It's not like he's this elite quarterback that's going to light the scoreboard on fire here. He's a little bit more competent, probably protects the ball a little bit better, but he had plenty of turnovers for the Commanders last year, took plenty of sacks as well. So I actually prefer Minnesota, my number 1 stream of the week at defense, but Atlanta a close second. Both of them follow my top 8 defenses for the week. Behind them, you got to consider the Raiders, 14% coming off a 13-point day on Monday Night Football against the Lions. Really solid team. Yeah, that was buoyed by a defensive touchdown here, but they've had some really solid plays, and a lot of that is attributed to Max Crosby, maybe the defensive player in the entire league, defensive player of the year. He'd have my vote, honestly, if that mattered for anything. But they also get the Giants this next week, -9 passing yards last week. I do think it sounds like Daniel Jones will be back, but I mean, yeah, you'd rather them be facing Tommy DeVito as a defense, but Daniel Jones has been a complete and utter bag of dirt this entire year. So I think the Raiders are in a great spot. This is a team that ranks 32nd in points per game, 32nd in yards per game, 32nd in yards per play. They're horrible. It's one of the worst offenses we've seen in years. So ultimately, Waller could also be out with a hamstring, so they might be even more banged up with even less weaponry. And this, again, Max Crosby, they are tied right now, the Giants, with the Commanders only, with an NFL high 41 sacks allowed. And it's just one bad hit, that neck injury for Daniel Jones, one bad hit away from another Tommy DeVito experience, again, -9 passing yards. So I really do like them. In terms of high floor options, though, the teams might be even safer here facing Tampa Bay at home. They have not allowed more than 21 points since week 2. They had 6 sacks against the Panthers last week. That D-line is absolutely coming into form, and it's on high floors, 13, 12, 4, 10, and 7 points across their last 5 games, a top 8 unit in that span. And Baker, always a fair bet for some turnovers and bozo type plays. So I don't hate the Texans. Last defense I did want to shout out was the Packers, getting the Rams here, largely because you're getting Brett Ripien starting for Matt Stafford. And they have 9, 2, and 7 points in their last 3. So they've been solid, this Packers unit. Great pass defense. That should definitely be opportunistic, picking off Brett Ripien at home. Of course, if Matt Stafford ends up doing the unthinkable and playing, wouldn't like the Packers nearly as much, but they are a top 10 unit for me as well this week. I wanted to like the Patriots facing the Commanders. Again, the league high 41 sacks, 5th most points allowed to the defense, this Washington team. But just since losing Judon and Christian Gonzalez, they really have such a lack of playmakers on this Patriots team. They haven't topped 5 points since week 3. If they're ever going to do it, it'd be a week like this week, but that's a distant 6th option. You have 5 other options that are well ranked ahead of them for me. And again, Minnesota, 9% rostered, more likely to be out there anyways. That's where I would be leaning myself. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.